Snow drifted across the abandoned research station in slow, wind-tossed sheets, gathering in the cracks of concrete and the rusted ribs of old vehicles half buried by winter. The cold bit through even the thickest layers of gear, but Staff Sergeant Marcus Hale had long ago learned to ignore discomfort. What he couldn't ignore were the sounds, distant metallic impacts, shifting weight on frozen gravel, and the faint hum of energy he still wasn't used to hearing. Those sounds didn't belong on Earth. Hale lay prone behind a collapsed barrier, his rifle steady on its bipod, breath fogging the air as he scanned the far perimeter. The landscape was desolate, but it wasn't empty. Tracks, three-toed, heavy, deep, cut new scars through the snow. Heat signatures flickered intermittently on his scope, too regular to be animal movement and too cold to be human. The Vor'kesh were close again. He adjusted the magnification, every motion deliberate. His hands were steady, but tension crept along his spine. He'd been in combat zones across 2 continents, but nothing felt like this. Human enemies could be understood, motivations, tactics, fears. These creatures mocked them openly, as if the entire planet were a trivial curiosity. Hale exhaled slowly and whispered, "You're up early today." Private Lawson crouched beside him, trying to keep his teeth from chattering. Barely 20, green as spring grass, but brave enough to volunteer for a mission most veterans avoided. "I didn't want to sleep through another alien monologue," Lawson muttered. "If they call us primitive one more time." "They will," Hale said. "They enjoy it." As if summoned by the words, a broadcast crackled across their comms, smooth, resonant, contemptuous. "Humans, your presence here is unnecessary. Retreat into your shelters and preserve your limited lifespans." Lawson rolled his eyes. Hale didn't react, though the familiar irritation tugged at him. It wasn't just arrogance. The Vor'kesh believed their armor rendered them untouchable, and after watching their kinetic weapons bounce off it, Hale understood their confidence. Still, confidence had a way of slipping when confronted with the right kind of pressure. He glanced back toward the equipment case resting behind him. Inside was the new rifle system, longer, heavier, and meaner than anything he'd carried. It had been rushed to the field for this exact encounter. He didn't know if it would work, but Command had insisted it needed to be tested, and he had become the test operator by his simple reputation. Captain Rourke approached through the swirling snow, his silhouette bulky with gear. He stopped beside Hale, kneeling with a grunt. "Movement confirmed," he said quietly. 3 of them. Same direction as last time. "Casual walk again?" Hale asked. "Arrogant stroll," Rourke corrected. "They're enjoying themselves." Hale returned to his scope. The silhouettes emerged, a trio of towering, biomechanical forms advancing with casual, predatory grace. Their armor pulsed with green energy, their elongated heads sweeping the terrain with a predator's confidence. They knew humans were watching. They didn't care. A low mechanical chuckle crackled from one of them, amplified by their external emitters. "Observe, humans. Your resistance continues to amuse." Lawson muttered something under his breath, but Hale shut it out. Emotion didn't belong here. Precision did. Rourke leaned closer. "You know the order? If you have a clean shot, take it." Hale nodded. He didn't need reminders. He centered the crosshairs on the lead alien's chest plate, calibrating distance and wind. The rifle felt unfamiliar but solid, a tool with one purpose. The aliens continued forward, unconcerned. "Hale," Rourke said, voice low. "Let's show them something new." Hale's finger brushed the trigger, breath thinning into stillness. Despite the cold, despite the fear, a calm certainty settled over him. Maybe the shot would fail. Maybe the weapon would do nothing. But humanity needed an answer, and he was the one positioned to give it. The creatures drew nearer, laughter echoing across the snow. Hale exhaled once more, steady and resolved, and took aim. Hale held his breath until the world seemed to shrink to a narrow corridor of snow, steel, and the alien figure centered in his crosshairs. The lead Vor'kesh moved with the same careless swagger they had shown during every previous encounter, its luminous eyes scanning the frozen outpost without the faintest suggestion of caution. To them, Earth's defenders were merely a curiosity, temporary, fragile, irrelevant. Hale felt that familiar irritation rise again, but he kept it contained, compressing it into a sharp, steady focus. Emotion muddied aim, purpose refined it. The wind shifted slightly, brushing ice crystals across his cheek. He adjusted his aim by a fraction, instinctively accounting for the gust. The experimental rifle's weight pressed against his shoulder, heavier than anything he'd fired in his career. Inside its chamber waited a single round engineered with hurried precision and quiet desperation. Hale wondered what the scientists had felt when they designed it. Hope, fear, or simple obligation. Whatever their intention, the result now rested on his trigger finger. Lawson had gone completely still beside him, breath held as if movement alone might disrupt the shot. Rourke crouched behind them, stoic but intensely alert, the tension in his posture unmistakable. They all knew what this moment meant. If this failed, their defense would unravel. If it succeeded, even in the smallest way, everything could change. The Vor'kesh continued forward, armor shimmering with that unnatural green glow. Hale had watched bullets flatten against it, watched explosives detonate uselessly, watched his fellow soldiers retreat beneath the weight of alien mockery. But now he saw something new, an opening in the creature's gate, a momentary alignment of plates over its chest where the energy field flickered. A weakness, brief, narrow but real. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle thundered, its blast echoing like a shockwave across the empty station. The recoil slammed into his shoulder harder than expected, but he held his position, refusing to blink. The round streaked through the icy air, a whisper of motion almost swallowed by the wind. It hit. The alien's armor buckled inward with a jarring, metallic shriek, followed by a flash of rupturing energy. The creature staggered backward, clawed hands jerking toward its chest as green light sputtered chaotically across its torso. A brief, disbelieving silence fell over the battlefield before the armor split open entirely, exposing a pulsing core that cracked like a shattered gemstone. An implosion of green radiance consumed the alien, snuffing its life in an instant. Lawson choked out, "No way that actually worked." Rourke didn't speak. His face was a portrait of stunned calculation, mind already racing ahead to the implications. The remaining two aliens halted mid-stride. Their heads snapped toward the fallen commander, disbelief etched into every motion of their biomechanical frames. For the first time, Hale saw hesitation, raw, bewildered hesitation, as if they couldn't comprehend what their senses reported. One of them emitted a fractured burst of electronic sound, something between panic and denial. The other stepped backward, weight shifting uneasily. Their armor's glow dimmed, losing the steady rhythm that had once radiated invulnerability. Hale cycled the bolt slowly, deliberately. He wasn't sure if the next shot would produce the same result, but the important truth had already surfaced. They weren't untouchable. They weren't gods. They weren't beyond reach. The Vor'kesh broadcast crackled again, but the tone had shifted. No more taunting. No more amused condescension. Only a sharp, frantic command directed at itself. The meaning unclear, but the urgency unmistakable. "They're spooked," Lawson whispered, awe creeping into his voice. Hale didn't look away from his scope. "Good." The two remaining aliens took several steps back, retreating for the first time since they had set foot on Earth. And in that small, fragile victory, Hale felt the shape of the conflict change entirely. The battlefield held a tense, electrified stillness as the two remaining Vor'kesh stared at the smoldering remains of their commander. Hale kept his eye pressed to the scope, watching every subtle shift in their posture. For the first time since the aliens had arrived, they looked unsure, their movements stripped of the arrogant ease that had characterized them until now. The fracture in their confidence was small but undeniable, and Hale felt a grim satisfaction anchor itself in his chest. Doubt, once introduced, had a way of spreading. Rourke placed a steady hand on Hale's shoulder. "They know," he murmured, "and they don't like it." Lawson shifted beside them, still wide-eyed, but steadier than before. The shock had worn off, replaced by a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. If we push now, he whispered, maybe, just maybe, we can drive them back. Hale didn't answer immediately. He studied the aliens, noting how their armor's glow flickered, pulses uneven and strained. They were recalibrating, reassessing, attempting to reconcile their shattered assumptions. For a species that had never tasted vulnerability, this moment must have felt like an earthquake. Then the nearest Vor'kesh crouched, claws digging into the snow as it emitted a sharp burst of sound, an unmistakable rallying signal. The hesitation vanished. Pride reclaimed their posture, though there was a brittleness to it. With a synchronized surge, they charged. Rourke barked into the comms, rallying the scattered soldiers along the ridgeline. All units, concentrate fire. They can bleed. Make them prove it. Gunfire erupted, tracers slicing through swirling snow. Hale cycled another round, though he knew this one lacked the experimental composition of the first. Still, the shot mattered. Every wound would widen the crack in their invincible facade. He fired. The round struck the alien's shoulder, staggering it and tearing away a plate of armor. Though it didn't kill, the effect was profound. The creature recoiled with a harsh, startled cry, stumbling sideways as if refusing to accept the impossible. Its counterpart faltered mid-stride, momentarily breaking formation. The humans seized the opportunity. A coordinated volley forced the Vor'kesh to retreat a few steps, green light stuttering across their armor like a failing heartbeat. This is working, Lawson breathed, firing short, controlled bursts. They're actually scared. There's something, Hale muttered, already lining up another shot. Fear might not fully capture it. It was closer to existential shock, the kind that rewrote a species' understanding of its place in the universe. The injured alien attempted to regain footing, its movements jerky and uncertain. Instead of pressing forward, it angled toward its fallen commander, desperate to shield the corpse from human fire. The second alien positioned itself defensively, blocking the human's line of sight. Their sudden protectiveness spoke volumes. Whatever secrets their armor held, they didn't want them discovered. Rourke read the shift instantly. They're trying to keep us away from that body. Means it's valuable. Means we hit a nerve. Hale sharpened his focus. If they could force the Vor'kesh to abandon the corpse or make another mistake, humanity might gain more than a small victory. They could gain knowledge. But the aliens weren't ready to retreat. With a guttural, synthesized roar, the uninjured one launched itself forward again, rage overpowering reason. The other followed, driven by wounded pride and desperate instinct. They're coming in hot, Lawson shouted. Hale steadied his aim, breath slowing despite the chaos. The aliens were faster, angrier, and more reckless than before, but that recklessness made them predictable. He pulled the trigger, and the battlefield shifted again. The shot struck cleanly, widening their doubt as every soldier braced for what followed next. Snow settled over the battlefield in drifting sheets, softening the harsh outlines of alien bodies and shattered earth. The final Vor'kesh lay motionless where Hale's last round had driven it down, its armor flickering weakly before its inner glow faded entirely. The sudden quiet felt unreal, as if the world were pausing to make sense of what had just occurred. Hale lowered his rifle slowly, shoulders heavy with the mixture of exhaustion and clarity that followed a long, decisive fight. Victory, especially one born from uncertainty, carried its own kind of weight. Rourke approached first, boots crunching over frozen debris. His expression was a blend of pride and restrained astonishment. "You did it," he said quietly, though the words felt too small for the moment. He took a slow breath, as if absorbing the gravity of the battlefield. "We did it," he corrected, nodding toward the scattered soldiers now emerging from cover. Lawson jogged up beside Hale, face flushed with cold and adrenaline. He stared at the alien bodies with wide, searching eyes. "I thought we'd be wiped out," he admitted. "But we actually, what's the word, outplayed them." Hale let out a short, tired exhale. "We showed them they're not untouchable." It wasn't a boast. It was a simple truth, spoken more to anchor himself than anyone else. The realization that these creatures, revered across the galaxy for their supposed invincibility, could be felled by human hands was almost overwhelming. The soldiers formed a perimeter as scientists from the support team hurried to the fallen commander's corpse, equipment rattling with every step. Hale watched them work, attentive but wary. The alien armor, even inert, radiated an unfamiliar energy. The scientists murmured to each other, analyzing the rupture where the experimental round had breached the protective plates. One knelt, tracing the fractures like a cartographer studying a map of impossible terrain. Rourke leaned closer to Hale. "They're going to tear apart piece by piece," he said. "Figure out why that shot worked." "Good," Hale replied. "Because the next time they come, we'll need more than luck." Rourke's jaw tightened. There will be a next time. Word of this will spread, and their pride won't let them ignore it. Across the comms, updates spilled in from command. Global networks lighting up with transmissions, world leaders demanding briefings, allied militaries shifting to high alert. Humanity had been a quiet participant in a galaxy that rarely acknowledged its existence. Now, after one shattering shot, the attention would be unavoidable. Lawson sat beside Hale in the snow, rubbing his gloved hands together. "Do you think other species will hear about this?" he asked. "They already have," Hale said. "The Vor'kesh relied on fear as much as strength. Today they lost both." A distant tremor of wind carried the faint scent of scorched metal. Hale rose to his feet, his joints aching from hours of tension. He walked toward the fallen commander, stopping a few steps away. Snow gathered around the spent casing lying near his boots, half buried but unmistakably significant. He picked it up, turning it between his fingers. It was ordinary brass to the eye, yet impossibly symbolic, proof that humanity had pierced a myth older than its own recorded history. Rourke joined him, gaze steady. "That little piece of metal," he said, "will change everything." "Maybe," Hale replied softly. "Or maybe it just reminded us what we're capable of." The horizon glowed faintly as the storm clouds thinned, revealing a dim ribbon of morning light. For the first time since the Vor'kesh arrived, Hale felt something other than dread. Something sharper, steadier, more promising. Hope, earned the hard way. He slipped the casing into his pocket, the metal warm against his palm. The universe would come looking, and humanity would need to be ready. But they were no longer prey, stumbling in the dark. They were a species that had stood its ground, faced the impossible, and fired the shot that shattered invincibility. And Hale knew, with quiet certainty, that the galaxy would remember it.